I want to do something I normally don't do, because normally I start out, hey, what are your questions? Anybody with questions or comments? But I want to discuss, there's something that is happening in the churches and in the Christian communities that I think is damaging to Christians. There was and it's just not true, but I hear it a lot, right? You know that everybody talking about mental illness now, right? Everybody crazy. And nobody's talking about why or how it happens. And so there's this pastor by the name of, let's see here, Jarrid Wilson, Pastor Jarrid Wilson, and he was at Harvest Christian Fellowship Church, and I believe that's out in Riverside, California. Well, this guy, it was reported that he committed suicide. Did y'all hear about that? Yeah, and this is like one of those large mega churches out there in Riverside, California. And this guy he was not the head of the church. Let's see, the head of the church is a guy by the name of Greg Laurie. He's the head of that church, right? Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You guys seen him before?
We're from New Jersey, we know things.
Oh, yeah, is he on TV or something?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
For years.
All right, okay. Well, he's the head of that church, right? And and I don't know if I want to know what you all think about this or not, but I do want to hear from you about this. So this man, he committed suicide. Jarrid Laurie committed suicide. Wilson committed suicide. He had a wife and 2 kids, young kids too. I believe they were both boys, 2 young boys. And this guy was known for a really big time preaching the Bible and doing all the stuff that they do at church, right? And so he committed suicide. And after he committed suicide, his wife went on Instagram and she said, his wife is Juli Wilson, and she said, my loving, amongst many things she said, my loving, giving, kind-hearted, encouraging, handsome, hilarious, give the shirt off his back husband went to be with Jesus late last night. That was her first response from it. She went on, just one other thing the wife said. She said, I love you forever, Thomas Jarrid Wilson. But I have to say that you being gone has completely ripped my heart out of my chest. You love me and our boys relentlessly, and I am forever grateful that I had you as a husband and a father to our boys. One other thing she said, I just saw it right now. She said, I need you, Jarrid, but she wrote J-A-R-E, Jarrid. But you needed Jesus to hold you, and I have to be okay with that. You are everything to me since the day we met. J and J love you more. So I needed you, but you needed Jesus to hold you. So there's this guy by the name of Greg Laurie, and he is the head pastor of that church. Are you familiar with that church?
Yeah.
So the pastor said, Greg Laurie said, he said things like, it was my deepest regret and sadness we lost this guy at a sad time like this. There are no words to say. The Bible says there's a time to mourn. There is a time, this is the time. And he mentioned that this guy died, he had wives and kids, a wife and kid. Oh, he said that Jarrid loved the Lord and had a servant heart. So there's the son of the pastor, of the head pastor, did the service, I guess, or he spoke at the service. And he said, Pastor Jarrid Wilson is at home in the arms of Jesus. He declared because he put his faith in Jesus as his Lord and Savior. Now here's what the head pastor, apparently he preached on these things at some point in his church. And then this Jarrid Wilson guy went up and thanked him for it and showed his appreciation that I'm glad you preached those things. Here's some of the things that he preached. Pastor Greg Laurie wisely pointed out that seen as serve as leading Bible figures, he said that Bible figures suffer from debilitating depression and mental health issues. So people who are teaching the Bible are suffering from these things too, right? This guy went on to say, Greg Laurie did, that Job wished he had never been born. This man preaching this in the church, he said that Jeremiah at least on one occasion wanted to die. Jonah wanted to die too. Prophet Elijah experienced deep depression. Wilson personally showed his appreciation for those honest remarks. So my point is that this is horrible, that the churches are going along with the world about mental illness, and it's like there is no separation between children of God and children of Satan. And they sound like, and I've heard this, not all my life, but at least earlier in my adulthood. But they sound like once you're born again, that everything's still the same. That you're going to experience the same thing the world experienced. You're going to go through it. You're going to commit suicide, and there is no hope. And the world called it mental illness, and so the churches are now calling it mental illness. And as a result of that, I'm wondering, what's the purpose of being born again if nothing's going to change? If you're going to have the same problem that the world has and deal with them in the same way. I don't understand what they think salvation is about. And this guy, Jarrid, he read the Bible, he quote the scriptures, he loved thy neighbor, love everybody, and blah, blah, blah. What is the purpose of salvation? Anybody know? Why y'all looking crazy? I don't know. So let me just tell you about salvation, all right? And I can only tell you because it happened to me. Because no one can make themselves be born again. Only God can cause that to happen. And he see fit of whomever he want to draw in to cause salvation, right? And so I was like the average Christian before I was born again. I read the Bible. I still did all the stuff that you're not supposed to do when you're a Christian. Sex out of wedlock and all that, right? But then inside I was unhappy. I was miserable. I wasn't able to stand up and be a man, and I felt insecure on the inside. And at the time I've been to many churches, but Crenshaw Christian Center was the last church I attended. And they taught you how to read the Bible, how to pray in tongues and all that stuff. But none of that stuff worked. None. It just makes you feel good for a moment, but it doesn't last, right? And so I finally thought I'd ask God to let me see myself. Because I've always wanted to know what it's like to live on earth as a son of God. I didn't want to die and find out what that. It doesn't seem like it'd be fun to be a son of God in heaven. Look like it'd be best to be one here, where all the trouble is, right? So I've always wanted to know, what was it like to be a son of God? And so even as a kid, I would ask, what is that like? Because the Bible said that if you're a son of God, you're supposed to have peace right here on earth. It didn't say when you die and all that, but right here on earth, right? That's the whole purpose of Christ coming, that while we live, we should be able to deal with the issues of life, the warfare between good and evil. So I always wanted to know. Long story short, I asked God, let me see myself, because I was going to church and nothing was working. And he allowed me to see I had this dark spirit on the inside. I literally saw it. It was real fast, but I saw it. I'm like, wow, that's weird. And it wasn't like a night. It was like a wicked spirit that fly into your bedroom through the wall when you're sleeping. Anybody ever had that? Like something come in your room trying to hold you down? Yeah, it was like that kind of spirit, right? And I thought, wow, that's weird. And so I wanted to know, how do I overcome that? So I asked God to just let me see. And then I realized, I had read in the Bible that you're supposed to be still and know God, right? And prior to that, I'd done all the hooping and hollering and raising up hands and shouting and dancing, praying out loud. It didn't work. And then God allowed me to see that I had unforgiveness in my heart. I had resentment. I hated my parents. I didn't know I hated my parents because they seemed like nice people. They housed me, they clothed me, they fed me, they did all the stuff that parents do, but they had no love, they had no patience. And children need patience from the parents. So that's what love is. And I realized, wow, I hate my parents. He allowed me to see one day that I hated them. And I knew, and he caused me to realize that by being angry at my parents, it was separating me from him. Because nobody can enter into the kingdom of heaven with anger. You got to overcome the anger first, and then you enter in. Because anger is the nature of Satan. It's his nature. It has no love in it. That's why parents are all, families don't work because there's no love in family members. Everybody operating from anger. And so there's no love. And so I forgave my mother because I realized it was her that I was angry at because she tried to turn me away from my father and all kind of stuff. No patience. But my mother wanted, if she walked in this room right now, she dead. But if she walked in, you would think she's the sweetest lady on this side of heaven. I don't know why Jesse mad at her. Look how nice she is, right? She's so holy, but it's different behind closed doors. And so I went and forgave my mother. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I was a grown man. I went and I just told her, I've always hated you because you tried to turn me away from my father. You had no patience. And I realized, because God allowed me to realize that she couldn't help it. Because I couldn't help myself in the way I felt. I knew she couldn't help herself. And so I went and forgave her. And and the way I forgave her, I apologized for resenting her. I realized, you know what, you couldn't help yourself. And for the first time in my life, she told me about her life, and exactly what she had did to me was done to her by her mother. And I had thought my grandmother was an angel sent by God, but that wasn't true. All right? And so she apologized. Most mothers don't, but she did. But even before I went to her, I could already see. God was allowing me to see. A lot of you already see, right? Because he has allowed you to see you do have this anger you need to forgive. But when I went and forgave her, I've never been the same. He took the spirit of anger away. He took that darkness out of me and gave me a sound mind and perfect peace. And then he also caused me to realize that I read in the Bible that of yourself you can do nothing and know nothing. You can't change yourself. There's nothing you can do about changing yourself, right? And so I just realized that, so I stopped trying. Because now this is pretty cool. I have peace, right? And so I had this peace. I'm like, wow, this is so nice. And I went to my father and had a little talk with him. But in reality, I didn't resent my father. I longed for my father. I wanted my identity back. And so my father and I became one. My earthly father and I became one. And through him, it was just all done. And 30 years gone by now. And I feel like I'm just a living being. I don't feel anything. So when people call me names or they say things that are not true, or right now we got to move by December, right? So we got to raise the money so we can move. So I'm looking for a place almost every day now. And everything's so expensive. And so Satan's trying to say, oh, you're not going to happen. It's not going to work, right? But because I can now recognize his voice, I don't have to give in to it. I don't have to believe it. Because I know the voiceless voice of God, and I know the voice of Satan now. Where before I didn't know the difference. I didn't know God revealed and Satan talk to you, and that he sounds just like you or whomever you hate, right? And so these people who have committed suicide in these churches, and a lot of people committed suicide now, instead of calling mental illness, they are listening to the voice of Satan. They really are. And they literally can't help it because they have not been born again. Because once you're truly born again, you're separated from the voice of Satan and you're guided by what is right. And there's no reason to kill yourself because life is so amazing. And you know that it is because you have peace and you're overcoming challenges and situations, things that you used to give into as Christian. I think Christine said that. You don't give into them anymore. And you say, wow, I used to get mad about that, or I used to hold a grudge about it. You can't do it anymore. It's impossible because it's not in you to do it anymore. Your whole thing changed. And you know God is with you because now you're dealing with issues in the right way where you're not affected within about them. And so in my life, the last 30 years has been amazing. I'm changing all the time. I can't feel it, taste it, or touch it. But I notice the way I deal with situations, the things I used to be concerned about or worried about, they're no more. And I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I can't imagine thinking about killing myself. It doesn't even make sense. Or being depressed, or being worried, because my faith is in the Father. And in God, in Him, there is no worry. There is no suicidal thoughts and depression. You can't have His nature and be depressed. Anyone who gets depressed has the nature of Satan. Satan, your daddy. So, and he is the one that convinced you to be depressed. He makes you judge yourself, and once you judge yourself, he'll say, oh, you might as well kill yourself. You ain't worth nothing no how. Nobody cares. You're like, okay, daddy. Where are the pills or the gun or whatever, right? It's Satan who's caused you to kill yourself. You cannot kill yourself if you're of God, been truly born again, not just read the Bible born again, but that nature has changed and now you're living from the kingdom of heaven within. You can't take the life. It's too nice. You don't even want to take it. You know what I'm saying? You have peace. And yes, for those who want to know, do you get angry when you're born again? When you're first born again, Satan's going to still come and try to tempt you to judge again, to judge yourself or someone else. But don't worry, you know that it's Satan's voice. Don't listen to it. And you're growing away from it. God is bringing you away from Satan's voice. And after a while, he'll get further away where he will be no issue at all. And so if he try to get you to hate your neighbor or somebody did something bad to you or you didn't like it, you'll be able to resist it. But you got to forgive first. And you got to truly forgive by realizing that that spirit is inside of you and it's causing you to hate others. It's not you, but it's this thing that's made a home in you. And so when these people kill themselves or they die, whatever, and everybody go up, oh, they were so loving, I loved them. This guy, Jarrid Wilson, was a coward. He did not believe in God. He may have believed about God, but there's no way you can be called by God to point the way for others to go to God, and you're going to be depressed and killing yourself? How are you going to point someone to someone that is not making you have, causing you to have peace? That doesn't go together.
How did he die?
They never said how he died.
They didn't say it.
We've been trying to find how did he do it, but they didn't have it said.
Or took pills or
Yeah, we don't know yet. They are hiding that information for some reason. But I want you to know that all this stuff that I remember once, I think it was an uncle or somebody died. I think one of my uncles, maybe somebody, so many of my folks dead. But they asked me to come and speak at the funeral. And so I went up, everybody went up and, oh, he was so nice, he was so loving, he was this and that, all lies. Total lies, right? And then I went up and I said, you know what? This person was no good. I don't know why y'all saying this. If anything, talk about how you should not be like him. You know what I'm saying? He was an alcoholic. He never got over really living life. And when we would see him coming, we would run the other way. But when he died, everybody get up and lie about it. Why are you lying? The problem with lying about it, you're deceiving other people. You think, oh, you could be a Christian and be, worth nothing and still go to heaven. So why change, right? So you're lying to those they knew this person, they're aware of this person, And I did a funeral for a friend of mine, a member of the church, and his mother died. And he asked me, would I do the funeral? He and the wife asked me. I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yeah, I'm going to have to tell the truth. That's why we want you to come, right? And so same thing, family member got up in line. And when I went up, I said, this woman was hell to pay. She separated the children from the father. She had all kind of issues she never overcame. If anything, learn from her so you can overcome that before you die. It's best to tell the truth, I think, instead of lying. So I understand maybe this wife of his, Juli Wilson, she may be, I'm sure she feel bad about it. That's her husband, right? But for her to say, she said, I need your love. She did need his love. This man had 2 young sons and a wife. Why would God give him a wife and 2 young sons and then take the husband away and he go sit next to Jesus? I'm sure Jesus is like, what are you doing here? I don't need you. Your wife needs you. Your kids need you. God doesn't do that to you. He only gives his life. He doesn't take it. All right? And so when you hear this kind of stuff, don't believe it. And mental illness is a psycho-spiritual illness or something like that. Because if you're not born again, you're subject to Satan. Because it's a spiritual battle between good and evil. I hear that everybody crazy. Everybody, their mama mentally ill, but nobody really say why. How come everybody's all of a sudden mentally ill? They never say why, or they'll make up some lie. It's only because you have not been born again. And so your mind, that's how Satan gets in through your mind. He gets in that way by causing you to judge yourself or overreact to a situation. And when you do, he can make you overreact to something else. Once you're born again, that's it. You cannot go in and out. You're protected from the world. You will have a sound mind. That's why Jesus came, that we may have a sound mind and not this crazy mind that Satan has given us. You cannot be a child of God and have a crazy mind. That makes sense? Right. So the Christians need to be born again so they can be, as this young lady said, the light of the world, so that those with the crazy mind can see how to overcome. You can be there and answer questions and point them back to God. But Christians don't have crazy minds. If you got an angry mind, Satan is your daddy. And you might as well admit it so you can overcome it. But to lie to yourself, you're just feeding into Satan more and more. He will change you the moment you realize you're wrong for hating. That makes sense? Anybody disagree with that?